Welcome back. As you know, Governor Newsom this month rolled back some reopenings like no more indoor dining. And now State Senator Steve Glazer thinks we should go a step further, back to essential trips out only, like when we first locked down. Is that the answer? Well, a PR company that uses data to make marketing decisions has analyzed cell phone data and has some eye-opening conclusions about how each step of reopening has affected COVID numbers. So joining us now to talk about it is Ben Kaplan, CEO of Top Data. Ben, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. And it's super interesting to look at the data because actually what we can look at is publicly available anonymous cell phone data.
Okay, so you looked at it. What is the main takeaway?
Sure. Well, one of the first things you realize is that social interactions are highly correlated, the number of social interactions for the average person with the number of COVID cases we see about 2 to 4 weeks later. So the way we measure this in the data is essentially we can see for an extended interaction. That means that two cell phone GPS signals stay close to each other for 5 minutes or more. So this isn't like walking by someone, outside on a jogging trail. This is like extended interactions together.
We
can see that
let's take a look at the graphic.
More that increases. Oh, yes. And we can see that the more that increases, then about 2 to 4 weeks later, it is highly correlated with the number of cases we have. So to give you an idea, nationally versus California, currently about now in the Bay Area, we have about 2.9 interactions per day for the average person.
By the way, Ben, this is what we're looking at. I just want to give our viewers a little context. That red line is the number of human interactions. You can see it totally took a nosedive when the stay-at-home order took effect, right? And then it dropped to like about 1 interaction a day. And Ben, it does look like in May, when we started to have the phase 1 reopening and then a couple of weeks later the phase 2 reopening, that we started to see that start to climb, the human interactions, right? What are we at now?
Yes, it starts to climb overall, and to give you an extent, it starts to climb all over California, and actually the Bay Area is about around at 2.9 interactions per day right now. In LA County, it's actually 4 interactions per day. And what's interesting is there seems to be a critical number somewhere between 2.5 and 3 interactions per day where things get out of control. So what we've been able to see, though, is we actually can control whether things are manageable or not manageable. And we're at that low 1 or 2 interactions per day level, then we see cases really taper down. The minute we start getting 2.5, 2.75, 3 interactions per day, then suddenly things start going up. And then when you hit a critical number, then you see really exponential growth in the COVID cases.
Ben, we have about 1 minute left, but I also want to show people this other graphic, right? Because that's looking at Alameda. And Alameda County is one of the Bay Area counties where we've seen kind of a recent spike, and we've had more rollbacks. And show me what's going on here, because I see a blue line that indicates the distance traveled, also measured by cell phone, and then the red line, which is human interactions, which we talked about. But talk to me about what this is also showing. And the yellow bars, of course, the vertical ones are the number of COVID cases, which we see, spiking in the past couple of weeks.
Well, a good way to think about it is that the distance traveled, that blue line, is life returning back to normal. And ideally, if the economy reopens and people are going about their day, we should see it, it should go back up to normal. But the key is that there needs to be a gap. So distance traveled increases, but the number of interactions stays low. That's what we want to see over time. So the ability to maximize that gap sort of says life can return to normal, but people won't get sick. And that really becomes key. And then what the struggle is when both start trending up and then together, and we don't expand the gap, then it gets very difficult for the economy to reopen.
I see that. It is surprising to me looking at this that the distance traveled is pretty much back to normal before the pandemic started. That is really interesting. I wonder where people are going and where they're, driving to.
Sure.
But that's another story. Jennifer wants to know, what do you mean by interactions? I know you cover that in the beginning, but maybe define that a little more clearly for us as well.
Sure. And interactions is basically 2 people being close together for 5 minutes or more. We can see that with anonymous cell phone data because we can basically see 2 GPS signals together that are there together for a long period of time. So that's what we mean by interactions. And so I would say interactions is the opposite of social distancing, right? If we do a lot of social distancing, the interactions are down. If we don't do so well in social distancing, the interactions go up. And I think one of the really surprising things too is that it looks like from the data, so the number of social interactions on average per person per day really is the critical determinant of the number of cases. Now, other things can mitigate that. For instance, if more people are wearing masks, then maybe you get a little bit more buffer zone and you can interact a little bit more.
Right.
Or, right now, if the COVID case, if COVID-19 doesn't mutate as fast, right? So it's a little bit more contagious now than before.
Absolutely.
If it's not mutating as fast, you get a little bit more buffer. But the key is that social interaction.
Well, Ben, I have to say, this has been really eye-opening and interesting, and no doubt policymakers are studying those graphs that you have now to kind of help guide them. I appreciate your time. Take good care, Ben.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.